Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael and I'm building this 1993 run-down inner-city viaduct-based N-gauge model railway layout. For 3 years I've shown how I approach scratch building this townscape, but today's video is a little bit different. Today I'll be showing how I used a commercial kit to make this atmospheric chain link fence for the bottom of the back street behind High Street. Being N-scale, this thing is tiny. So join me then for chain link fence, constructing a scale model scenery N-gauge laser cut kit. So this is the kit. It's a chain link security fence from scale model scenery. The kit comprises some laser cut components: gates, gate posts, fence posts and angled post supports. And of course the fine mesh that represents the chain link fence itself. My first impressions were that this was small, very fine, and promises to be very fiddly. Having decided where to put the posts, the first step was to drill holes for them. The instructions suggest 0.8mm holes, so I used the 0.8mm bit in my pin vise to start drilling them. I measured the gaps between the posts as best I could, but I regret taking this gung-ho approach. More on this later. With the hole drilled, the post, which was cut from the sprue with a sharp knife, was dropped into the hole. I found 0.8mm too small and I had to enlarge the hole by wiggling my crochet hook inside it, but eventually the post dropped into place. I repeated the process and was soon left with 7 posts as well as a gate post resting in place in a bed of PVA glue. The instructions suggest painting the posts first, but my preference was to paint them once they were in place. They are very fine and very delicate, but holding them upright with an engineer's square was enough to keep them right whilst the glue went off. I was confident that the PVA would evaporate, but I tidied it up regardless with my tweezers before it started to dry. Whilst the glue was drying on the posts, I used simple black acrylic paint to paint the gate. This thing is absolutely tiny. I don't know how thick the parts of the gate are, but they are incredibly thin, maybe 0.2mm. It was hard to see it to paint, and that was even with my glasses on. I took my time and eventually the gate was painted black. It was time to add the chain link to the gate. This is some kind of fabric mesh. One of my channel members suggests that it is twill, some kind of netting dress fabric. Whatever it is soft, incredibly fine, and the strangest material I've worked with in Chandwell. I squirted a bit of Uhu glue onto a scrap piece of paper, and then used a toothpick to dab glue onto the painted gate. With that done, I dropped the gate onto the fabric. The effect was astonishing. This thing is barely the size of my fingertips, and yet it really does look like a chain link gate. I went back to the posts, which by now I had painted a simple grey. I used small dabs of PVA glue on the hinges, and dropped the gate between the posts that I had spaced just right to fit it. I made quite a mistake at this point. The gate seems to be on some kind of legs, and it took me a couple of hours to realise that it looked completely odd. I had to cut it away because the glue had already dried. I thought that these legs were actual pins that should have gone into holes, so I ended up just chopping them off and remounting it. In fact, it turns out that I simply had the whole thing upside down. Oops. I'll get it right next time. So it was time to fix the mesh. I needed a strip of mesh 13mm wide. The instructions propose a genius method of cutting it. I stuck parcel tape across the mesh, and this made it really easy to cut with a scalpel without tearing or snagging it. I marked 13mm with my scalpel on one end, and then the other. And then I just sliced along the parcel tape. I'd learnt by now that humble PVA is more than enough for holding this kit together. I added the tiniest blobs to the posts, before using my tweezers to gently push the nylon mesh against the posts. I tried to keep it as straight and tight as possible, and it just pressed into place after a few seconds of messing around. So I was pretty pleased with myself. It had taken less than an hour and I had what I thought was a lovely chain link fence. But did I? Just looking at this shot, we can see quite a few issues. The gate is upside down. I chopped off those legs and remounted it. This made it passable, but it's still wrong. These 2 posts are significantly higher than the others. This was almost impossible to see with the naked eye, but it stands out a mile on this shot. I ended up cutting them, filing them down and remounting them, against the nylon mesh, which thankfully didn't tear. It's now looking better, and if this layout was just for my own use, I'd be happy with it. But Chandwell exists to be filmed and photographed, and I can't help but realise that the spacing between the posts really is not uniform. I used a slapdash method of measuring, and I really should have been more accurate. I would live with it, but there's something else wrong too. I realise now that the angled parts of the anti-climb post should be pointing outward to the side where the climbers will be. I have the whole thing backwards. So I've decided to rip the whole thing out and try again. I'll use a printed guide for the hole placement. I'll mount the gate the right way up, I will ensure the posts are a uniform height, and I will make sure that they are the right way around. This fence really is tiny, and much of what I've said would hardly ever be noticeable to the naked eye, but I am keen to make the most of what I have. This is a brilliant kit, and I really want to do it justice. It sets me back an hour or so, but it's the right thing to do. So keep an eye out in future, and at some point this fence will be replaced with a better one, and Chandwell will be one small detail better off. I've been discussing this fence with my channel members. If you're interested in joining the discussion, please consider joining my channel as a member. Press this silver button for details. Join me next week to see how I approached making this little modern Chandwell waterboard building, and why, after it was all finished, I decided not to keep it. It's also your chance to get your hands on this very building. So until then, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.